It's good enough for practicing the Dhamma. It's good enough for what we need. And that sense of contentment is supported by a lot of the minor rules in the Vinaya. So a lot of these minor rules keep bringing us back to these basic qualities of mind: contentment, gratitude, being satisfied with just a little. Even when there's a lot, just being satisfied with just a little. One time Ajahn Chah was given a very prestigious title called a Jiao-kunship. And this was a story that I just heard recently from Ajahn Sucitto. And he said that Ajahn Chah traveled to Bangkok, and these Jiao-kun titles, or honorary recognitions, were given out by the king to special monastics who were recognized. And so when he got to Bangkok, and they were preparing to go into the king's palace, the city monks were all dressed in their very fancy robes. They usually had quite a few sets, and so they were dressed in their fancy robes and, all pressed and kind of tied up. And then Ajahn Chah arrives, and he's just got his very simple, country, rough robes, forest monk robes, dyed with a natural dye. And he looked like a real country bumpkin. And he had his bowl. He was carrying his bowl with him. And apparently some of the other monks said, "What'd you bring your bowl for? We're going into the palace, the king's palace. What's the king going to say, when you bring your bowl into the palace?" And Ajahn Chah said, "Well, what would the Buddha say if I didn't?" So for Ajahn Chah, from my understanding of the way Ajahn Chah used the Vinaya as a training tool, one of the main emphases was on using it to develop mindfulness, sati, this continuous awareness throughout the entire day. And so many of the minor rules, the protocols, the etiquette in the monastery are based on that, and they require a continuous mindfulness, because almost everything that we do, there's a proper way to do it. And it takes mindfulness, it takes awareness. And something as simple as washing our bowl, drying our bowl, that becomes the meditation object. So when Ajahn Chah was using the Vinaya as a teaching and training tool, he was talking about developing a mindfulness which was not just a mindfulness that was based on a very refined aspect of a meditation technique, or a mindfulness that was located just at the tip of your nose, but a mindfulness that was applicable in every situation, which would be aware of everything that's going on in a particular situation. You come into a particular situation, a group, you very carefully, very intuitively suss out, okay, well, this is what the situation is. And if people are very mindful like that, then naturally proper behavior follows. So a lot of the monastic etiquette that we have is based on developing this type of mindfulness, a continuous awareness, moment by moment. Because then when we do sit down to meditation, it's not like we've just been allowing our minds to wander. We've been training in meditation, training in mindfulness, moment by moment. And then when we sit down to meditate, boom, we're right there. Close our eyes, and there's a seamless continuity of training throughout the day. something as simple as bowing. Ajahn Chah would encourage us to bow every time we came into our hut, every time we left. And this practice then has been passed down. So when I was a young monk, Ajahn Chah was no longer teaching. He was still alive, but no longer teaching. So almost everything that I learned about his way of relating to the Vinaya came from his immediate disciples. And something as simple as bowing, becomes a real meditation practice. Because every time you come into your kuti, bow 3 times to the shrine, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. If you don't have a shrine, then you bow to your bowl 3 times. And if you do that with even a little bit of sincerity, you say, I'm bowing. A bow is like lowering our head, lowering what is considered high, lowering our ego and placing it down in front of our higher ideals, things we respect, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And just doing that repeatedly, 3 times when you enter your hut. You go out to the toilet, bow 3 times. Come into the meditation hall, you bow 3 times. You sit down in your seat in the meditation hall, you bow 3 times. You get up, you bow 3 times. And each time that we do that, it's like just a little drop of wholesome karma. One more good intention. And then that begins to accumulate. They're very simple practices. These are not extremely complicated. But just the cumulative effect of bowing, bowing, bowing with a heart that is full of devotion for the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. It forms a very strong foundation then for meditation. And then Ajahn Chah would, he wouldn't just say bow anyways, he would have a very particular way to bow. So when you bowed, you have to really be in your body. And so this kind of practice is very good for people who are a bit intellectual. You just get your awareness in your body. Right? I think he had quite a bit of fun with the Westerners sometimes. Their strange ways of bowing. And say, no, get your butt down. Get your butt down. No, don't put your hands out here. Hands here. Yeah, that's right. Here. But because even something as simple as a bow, to do it properly, you have to develop mindfulness. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. So the way Ajahn Chah used the Vinaya as a training tool encompassed all these different aspects of the Vinaya. It was a convention that led one gradually away from worldly habits. A convention that gradually led to a sense of communal harmony. Because practically speaking, if we're living in a group, it's just so much easier if everyone's doing things in a particular way. If you live in communities, then it would be nice if everyone could live in absolute harmony without any rules. And in the very early part of the Buddha's teaching career, that's the way it was, because everyone was a fully enlightened arhat. But in those communities which everyone is not a fully enlightened arhat, then it can be very helpful to have the Vinaya as a training guide. And so Ajahn Chah never encouraged a blind following of the Vinaya, but using it as a tool to develop wisdom. It was very powerful, because if we're living in community and we have a certain framework that we're following, then inevitably it comes up. Our ego, our sense of self, our desires will come up against that. And that's precisely the place where we can practice. And say, well, I don't really feel like doing it right now. Doesn't matter. You do it anyways. You say, well, why do we have to do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? Well, it's true. It doesn't really matter if we do it this way or that way, but our community has agreed to do it this way. So we do it that way. And so all these views and opinions and attachments to views and opinions that can come up, just reflect back to us. Okay, am I suffering? Where's the suffering coming from? Is it really coming from some external situation? No. It's coming from my own mind. And so these very simple daily experiences, washing the spittoons, attending on the senior monks, very good for developing wholesome states of mind. There's a lot of respect for elders in the Vinaya. And again, this is a quality which is easily disappearing in our modern society. And respect for elders, it's not about whether the elder is enlightened or not. A lot of what we do in our communities is just based on who has ordained first. And then respect is paid according to that. And the junior ones serve the senior ones, and the senior ones then have responsibilities towards the junior ones, and it's a beautiful system. And it encourages this constant wholesome states of mind coming up. Say, well, how can I help?